Okay, welcome to Happy Hour here January 21st. It's starting with a new year. My name is Aaron Bai, and I'm the host for tonight, president of the SCIGBA. And Lisa will be giving us a presentation a little bit in just a short bit. And I'm in Minnesota, so we're coming up on some really cold weather, as even our southern people are. And if Laura would like to introduce herself and tell us about your herd.
Okay, I'm Laurel Sherry. I've been a member since the very beginning of this association. I helped start it, and I've been really interested in the genetics of the breed and doing work on preserving lines within the breed. And what we're going to talk about tonight is so exciting. This started quite a few years ago when I was trying to track down all of the San Clemente Island goats that I could and their lineage, especially the New Hampshire line. And I was in touch with a group on the East Coast who were, now what was their name? They were collecting San Clemente Island goats, doing tests on them, doing DNA on them, preserving genetics on them. SVF, the SVF Foundation. And I got in touch with a person who had been managing it for decades. And I got all the information from her that I could on what goats had gone through their facility, because they would get them from a breeder, keep them for a while, and then move them on to another breeder. But at the outcome, they would have genetic material on those goats, and they were preserving it. And nobody else was doing that with San Clemente Island goats. And then when they shut down, they passed all of their genetic material on to the, I should have looked up these before we started.
Smithsonian.
The Smithsonian Institute. Thanks, Lisa. The Smithsonian Institute, who took it on, and magically they responded to me and let me know, yes, they have it. And they were taking really good care of all of this material. And I had a full list of everything they had that was San Clemente. And it's about maybe 30 to 40 different goats that they have on, on preservation. And then we got interested in preserving the last living 100% New Hampshire doe, and she was not able to take kids to conclusion anymore because, development with her uterus, but she was still having heat cycles. So we thought, aha, we should get one of the bucks from SVF, from the Smithsonian, and do artificial insemination. And so they were very behind it. They donated the semen. We went through a whole process to do it. It was not successful. It was a great disappointment to us. And then we tried again with that semen. It's Elvis is his name. He was a buck from like the 1980s or 90s maybe. And again, we failed. So it was like, oh my God, But now Lisa has accomplished a major milestone. She has pregnant does from a buck from 1988 born on the island. It's like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. We have no record that this buck had any other kids. If he did, they weren't registered. We don't know about them. We don't know what happened to them. So it's like this genetic material is totally new to us, but totally original, from the island. So anyway, that's the history behind this.
Thank you very much, Laurel.
Do you want to go to the next panel?
Oh, I thought we were going to introduce each person and we can go through Christy and Jenny.
Oh, I thought I was starting.
I'm Christy Phillips. I'm in North Central Arkansas, and I am currently the Registry Committee Chair for the SCIGBA. And Laurel, while you were talking, I looked up the information that you had sent me, and Swiss Valley Foundation was the word you were looking for on that SCF. Yeah. I've just got a handful of SCI goats. I've got currently 4 does and 2 bucks, a buckling actually, and a buck. And so not a huge herd, but I'm getting started, and that's pretty much it about me.
Sounds good. And Jenny or Lisa, if either one of you would like to introduce yourself, please feel free to unmute and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Lisa Leonard. Along with my partner, we've got Wind Dancer Ranch. We've been raising San Clemente Island goats for about 8 or 9 years now. Have a pretty big herd, about 50 goats, including some kids, kids from last year now, in there. Very excited to be, I'm on the board of the San Clemente Island Goat Breeders Association, and very excited to be on the genetics committee and participating with this and talking about, not only the good stuff that the genetics committee is doing, but then also the specific project to breed to the buck that Laurel mentioned. So pretty excited to be here.
Thank you, Lisa. Jenny, I see you're unmuted. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jenny. I am Aaron's wife. We're here in Minnesota. I don't know if Aaron gave an introduction before I logged in. So we have a growing herd. We have 11 SCI does, and we have 4 males. One of them's a wether and 3 intact. So we have hopefully 7 pregnant does, and we have a small herd of pygmy Nigerian dwarfs still with us, 7 ladies. That we think one of them's an oopsie pregnancy, but we'll see what happens with that. So we might actually have 8 pregnant does, but it'll be an exciting spring for us.
Thank you very much. And Lisa, if you actually want to start the presentation, or was Laurel, were you going to be doing the first few?
Yeah, we've got one other person on, Lisa McCoon.
Yep.
Noel, I don't know if she wanted to introduce herself.
Here she is. Oh, she was unmuted and came back on mute.
Hi, I'm still a wannabe goat owner, and I'm just here to listen and learn.
Great, welcome.
Good to see you, Lisa.
Hi.
Good to see you again. Okay, Laurel, do you want me to go to the next slide then?
Yeah, and let me just say I'm in California, and I have a small herd. I've got 7 goats right now, 2 bucks. Anyway, I'm also the genetics committee chairman and have been working on these genetics for quite a few years now. So we have a good committee right now. I actually have help. I have Lisa, who's amazing, and John, also amazing, a great committee, and we're moving forward and getting things done. We have plans for the future. We want to do all of the things listed on this screen. Hopefully in the future get some genetics from Canada.
Yeah, they've loosened some of the restrictions exchanging genetic material across the borders. So that really opens up for us to be able to do an exchange with some of the breeders there.
That would be exciting. Want to go to the next panel? Yeah, so last year we accomplished setting up an actual gene bank. It's all set up, it's ready to receive genetics. We have some of the wonderful genetics that has been stored by the USDA for decades, and that we have 3 bucks in there right now, and that is like the San Clemente Island goats have never had a gene bank before, and that opens the door for a lot of future expansion and monitoring, and also bringing in genetics that have been lost. The frozen herd inventory is, we have 2 inventories. One is for extremely rare genetics like the ones we got from USDA, and also the ones from the Smithsonian. Those are extremely rare because those goats are long gone, and all we have are, you know, some of their genetics frozen. So there's that inventory, and then the other inventory, we decided to call it the frozen herd inventory, will be made up of currently alive bucks and maybe even some does, so that we can make genetics more available for breeders who can't keep a buck, or they want a specific buck that they don't have. So they would be able to look through our library of genetics and decide which one they would want to have, you know, inseminate their herd, and, you know, go from there. It's very exciting with a lot of possibilities for the future. And this inventory is going to be managed by the genetics committee, so that we are looking always toward the best usage for the breed. So, you know, if we're not going to be using 1 buck to, you know, sire dozens and dozens of kits, we're going to be monitoring it for the best for the breed, so that we get the most genetics available.
Yeah, and this is going to be open really to all breeders across the country, and even, you know, Canada, being able to go in, seeing what's available, and just order at a very low cost or for trade, to really help breeders with their individual herd genetic diversity, and, you know, keeping with a primary line, or getting a certain attribute in goats that they want to bring into their herd.
Yep. Next one. So this is about the critical genetics inventory, which I was talking about. And these are the ones where, you know, there's only a certain amount of straws from 1 buck who was born in 1988. And when that's used up, it is gone. So we're being very critical, and, you know, sort of making our decisions for the breed, totally for the breed, not for any other reason, not for personal gain, not for anything, but just for the breed.
Yeah, and Laurel mentioned earlier how she, you know, started the initial investigation with SVF, and then the Smithsonian, and then on to the USDA. The genetics committee is continuing to find these little pockets of long-term storage organizations that have SCI material. We hear rumors sometimes, you know, oh, there might be some at Texas A&M, for example. And so we try to track that down and see if we can actually find out if there is material and if we can gain access to it. a lot of those long-term storage organizations want to make sure that if they release material, it is used properly, as Laurel said, for the benefit of the whole breed, not, an individual's, benefit or what have you. So the genetics committee worked under the guidance and advice of the Livestock Conservancy to develop relationships with the long-term storage organizations that we know, and to understand the requirements that must be met in order to get that material released to us, and have developed a program that Laurel will talk about in a second, that we outlined. Here's how we, the community of breeders of San Clemente, would use this material and get long-term storage organizations to say, oh yeah, that's a good use of it. Yeah, we will work with you to release some of these material. And then we kind of support breeders who need to get that material. So there's kind of a lot behind it. You don't just sort of walk up to some of these organizations and say, send me two. They want to make sure that it's well used, and if they transfer it on to this SCIGBA, that we will make sure it's well used.
Yeah, for example, the USDA has an application that you fill out, and then that application that you want some of genetics and which bucks you want, and then that application goes to a group who has to approve it before you get consent to even have it shipped to you. So it's very interesting. They're really protective, which they should be. That's how come they've had the genetics for so long, and it's very rewarding when you pass their rigid restrictions. It's like, yay! And we did that this summer. We got genetics from the USDA on 3 ancient bucks that are no longer around. And they have no known progeny, so it's very special. Alrighty, next one. Yeah, so this is what we're specifically working on with the 3 bucks from the USDA. And we're hoping to recreate a line with those bucks with the does, to where they'll have kids, and then those kids are going to be, it's going to be figured out how to get those kids to breed back to kids that are very closely related without doing genetic damage by too much inbreeding. And then it's kind of complicated to just kind of explain it here, but the result will be there will be a line of goats who are related to Abuelo, a line of goats related to Hernando Ponce de Leon, and the same with Hernando de Soto, which is a whole new source of genetics that has been absent from our breed for decades.
Okay. And can you back up just once, because I just wanted to add that, you got to back up. There we go. So the projects to create those lines, so it's 3 different projects. Breeders who want to do that apply. There's a program. That program was approved or accepted by the USDA in this case, and so we've got some outlines of how the breeder needs to kind of run their project. Any breeder can apply. There are some requirements that Laurel will go through just to make sure that it's somebody who's got the long-term interests of San Clemente in mind. But this is open for more participation, and there are some requirements again, Laurel will go through them, but one of them is then also to help refresh and, help refresh semen at the USDA, help refresh some semen in the frozen herd inventory and stuff. So it's really it's intended to really benefit the whole community, not just the first breeders that get the genetics.
Right, and I think we can go to the next one. So these are some of the requirements that we came up with to try to make really good decisions for the breed. And this has all been approved by the board, our board. It's been approved by the Livestock Conservancy and the USDA. And it may seem a little strict, but it's because this genetic material is so rare. And so that's why we're having all these requirements. By the way, Dr. Phil Spanenberg, who is our genetic consultant and an incredibly educated and experienced person with goat genetics, he thought that when we sent him the news that we have 2 goats that are pregnant, he said this is the best use of that material, which was so nice to hear. Okay. And I think we're over to Lisa now, right? Nope.
I think you've got one more.
Okay. All right. Yes, this gets specifically into the requirements for the does. And each requirement has a reason. We want them registered. When you have goats that are registered, who it's easy to find out who their parents are, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, and you can keep track of their kids. When they're not registered, they can get lost so easily. So yes, they must be registered. That we want them to be good breeders, good moms, and we want them tested to make sure that we're protecting this, rare material. Okay. Erin, there we go. Lisa?
Okay, so this is also within the program, just some of the terms so that there's responsibilities on both sides with the breeder and the SCIGBA. So one is that assisted reproductive techniques will be used. Normal, or what you would call vaginal AI, is not very successful in goats. Neither is laparoscopic AI, but it's at least a little bit more successful. So we want to make sure that the breeder is willing to use some of the more advanced techniques in order to provide the best chance of success possible. Also, we want to make sure that these straw samples, at least one time, is sent for DNA analysis, both with VGL for the STR DNA analysis, and ideally also with Neogen for the 70K DNA analysis. We want to have that those genetic results on file, and also be able to prove that the babies came from them and not some buck that jumped the fence after this after the operation. The breeder will own all of the resulting offspring and will register them with SCIGBA. And the breeder will also return 10 straws of frozen semen from a first-generation buck, or as close to a first-generation buck as possible, and send them back to the frozen herd inventory with SCIGBA. And then the breeder will also report any transfers of offspring through the registration process. One of the key things is there's no SCIGBA funding for this, so the breeder is responsible for all costs of it. Correct. And we want to make sure that they have the funds to be able to pay for it. Next slide. Okay, so let's get into the project that I'm working on here at Wind Dancer Ranch, and this is the primary line creation project for Hernando Ponce de Leon. We don't have any pictures of him. We don't have a description. As Laurel said, we don't have any known progeny, in the modern herd book. So he's a little bit of a mystery, but we do know he was one of the original SCI goats registered with the International Dairy Goat Registry. He was noted in that as an island import, and his birth date was recorded as 1988. We don't know who had the foresight to collect him, but we know from the dates on the straw that he was collected January 8th, 1991. He was collected January 8th, 1991. Somehow the semen ended up in California for a while, and then it went to the USDA. We're still trying to figure out who did the collection, how all that transfer happened. We're hoping at some point I can get up to the group that held it. The group that held it for a while was up in Redding. They're no longer really operating, but they said they have a whole bunch of records, and so I'm hoping to be able to get up there and dig through the records and see if we can find out more information on who we have to thank for this gift, basically. The semen, even though it is 35 years old, it's still relative, with motility ranging from 20 to 50%, depending on the straw. Go ahead to the next slide.
Interject. You can go ahead with that slide. I wanted to interject here that you mentioned there's no information on him to speak of, and that's something that the board discussed at one of the meetings regarding this project, is that the genetics committee is going to keep good records with the semen that we bring in and everything that they're doing. And I was pleased, that we did have that conversation, and it's going to be dealt with, going forward more clearly.
Yep. Yeah. And I hope if I do get up to Redding, I will get up there eventually. It's just hard to leave the farm sometimes. But I'm hoping he's just got stuff in a box somewhere where we might have get a little bit more. We have some record of ownership of this buck, but it's in Florida. So what happened between Florida and California? That's the big question. Okay, so as far as the does that I selected for this project, I selected 6. It was supposed to be 4 with 2 backups. It ended up being, we ended up breeding all 6, but started thinking I was going to breed 4 with 2 backups. They were all in the 2 to 5 year old range. All had kidded at least once before. One of them had kidded 3 times. Clean kidding, no problems, good moms, good milk, all of that stuff. And that's just to make sure that, again, when we're using these rare genetics, that we give the kids the best chance possible, and also we maintain some of those wonderful reproductive characteristics that our goats are so good at. Most of the does that I selected were Mac Bryn Farms Polar Vortex daughters out of moms that came from SCIGBA bloodlines. And I intentionally tried to keep, even though I have like a wide variety of kind of other genetics on the farm, I tried to keep that concentrated, because the idea is if we're developing this primary line, when we send either semen out into the world or bucklings or whatever, you want, because we're doing this for genetic diversity, you want to be able to provide as much genetic diversity across different herds as possible, right? Even though we had gotten permission and access to use this semen about 10 months ago now. We chose to breed in the fall for a couple of reasons. One of which is that's when my does naturally come into very high, strong heat cycles, and that was kind of a recommendation given to me by a boar goat breeder who does a lot of lap AI. And also I didn't want kids, born in the middle of our hot summers here. That's just not very good for them. And also based on the recommendations of several vets, including an AI reproductive specialist and my boar goat friend, they said in the fall, get 2 really strong natural heat cycles before you start synchronization. Try to keep the does as much within their natural cycle as possible, even when you're synchronizing them. Okay, so next slide. So what we did is we had, right before we were to start all of this, we had our doctor from Blue Range Mobile Vet, Dr. Michaels, out to do a pre-breeding health exam and reproductive ultrasound. Wanted to make sure the girls were as healthy as possible. Everything looked good in there. They weren't pregnant already because mine tend to jump a lot of fences. And we just wanted to make sure that they were in as good a shape as possible, because when they go under this anesthesia, it's hard on goats. You want to make sure that there's no hidden heart or lung problems that might cause them problems. Lap AI, it's done a lot. It's minimally invasive, but it is not without risk, both infection, injury. My boar goat friend has lost several does who developed hernias at the incision point with lap AI. So it can, it can be a little dangerous procedure, and there's even does that have died from it. So you really need to make sure that your does are in top condition. And because the success rates are so low, 30 to 50%, and according to my boar goat friend, she said that range is a little high, any reproductive issues really need to be identified and addressed before you use a doe in the project. So we tried to make sure everybody was approved by Dr. Michael, and they all passed. So the next slide. So we had the procedure done at UC Davis, the Livestock Herd Health and Reproductive Services. This service is led by Dr. Brett McNabb, who happens to be a good friend of my neighbor across the street, which was kind of funny, and Dr. Francis Fan, who is a qualified vet going through kind of a secondary specialty certification in reproductive health at this extended program at UC Davis. She was kind of running it. Dr. McNabb was the one who performed the procedure. They had me start the estrus synchronization on October 11th with Cedars, which is an insert that has some hormones on it. You insert it vaginally, and it will stay in the goat for a couple of weeks before you start the actual hormone treatment. So we can go to the next slide. So we did the lap AI on October 23rd at UC Davis at their Livestock Herd Health and Reproduction Service facility. The does were brought in. I had tried to let all of the veterinarians know these are kind of spooky, pretty wild does. So, don't be worried if they're jumping around and kind of crazy, but surprisingly the does were very cooperative, and they even didn't object too much to the halters, which was the first time most of them had ever had a halter on. So I was really surprised. But one by one they were evaluated and then sedated and then placed on the cradles. You can see on the bottom right the sedated doe put in a cradle, and then they shave them, and they, put the, iodine solution, and, make sure everything's really clean and shaved, and because it is an slightly invasive procedure, so they want to make sure everything is clean and medically sound before they open them up. And then next slide. So then they put a couple little holes in them and put some air through those holes. And then through those two holes, a camera goes in on one side and kind of a tool on the other, where the camera can then visualize what's, where the tool is. The tool kind of will move fat around and then find the uterus. They'll find the ovaries, and they'll make sure that the uterus has good tone and that the ovaries haven't ovulated yet. And if all of it looks good, then they will take the semen, put it into that little tool, and using a very, very small needle, put it into the uterus, usually into one or the other or both horns of the uterus. And you can see Dr. McNabb there looking at the screen as he is deciding he's going to inject the semen into the uterus there. Go ahead, next slide. So all of the does, after they do it, they give the does another hormone shot to induce ovulation, and then they slowly wake them up. All of the does recovered really well from the sedation. That was a big relief. And just one by one, they went through and did them. And because the semen, we had enough straws and the motility was good enough, we were actually able to inseminate all 5 does that I had brought that day. And then I even brought another doe, a 6th doe, to use the last semen straw a couple weeks later, because we had shipped the semen to my house. It was in a semen tank that I had here, and it was better to use it than risk shipping it back to Indiana, because so many things can happen when it's in transit, and it was just like one extra straw. We were like, let's just get another doe prepped and have her inseminated. To me, I mean, just watching this whole procedure was really amazing, very sophisticated, very professional. They were all the vets involved were really good with the animals. I was really happy with the whole process. But it was hard to see the goats being upside down with these little cameras and things stuck in them, and just knowing that things could go wrong, even though things were always, the procedure went really, really smoothly. But just knowing that things could go wrong, it's very nerve-wracking. But I really felt that they were in the best of hands, so I was really happy with it. Okay, so next slide. And the vets provided detailed information on what they did with each of the does, what the semen was like. They did a motility analysis of each straw. They let me know where they put the straw into, whether it was just one uterine horn or both uterine horns. I had 2 does that had pulled their cedar prematurely. So when I went to pull the cedar and give them the hormone shot, the cedar was gone. They were very, very flexible, I guess. And one of them had good uterine tone. That was Laurel. Another one had some uterine tone, but the vet said, well, let's go ahead and put 1 straw in her anyways. And then we decided not to use the 2nd straw on that doe, just because she didn't have as good of a chance, as the others to get pregnant. So next slide. Then the UC Davis worked with me to not only get the residual straw to DNA analysis, but also talk to like VGL. VGL wanted a whole straw to do their analysis, and the vets at UC Davis called them and said, hey, you can't have a whole straw of this. This is pretty rare stuff. And so got them to agree to just take residual. So we sent some residual to VGL to do the STR analysis, which is kind of the normal analysis that we've all been doing on our San Clemente goats. And then we also sent some residual to Neogen to do a 70K array analysis. Neogen takes a long time, turnaround time, for a variety of reasons. So we still don't have the results from that DNA analysis yet. But we did get the results from VGL with the STR analysis, and Laurel sent it on to Dr. Spangenberg, and he actually had a comment that at one of the locus, or one of the results of the STR analysis, shows that this buck does bring in a new variant that we haven't seen before in the SCI goats. So that's kind of interesting, and it could be isolated, that he just brings in some new variant on that. But I suspect when we do the 70K array with Neogen and we start comparing it with other modern SCI goats who've had that 70K array, we'll probably have a couple new genetics being brought in with him. Let's go ahead to the next slide.
And that is amazing.
Yeah. So then the pregnancy ultrasounds were scheduled for December 9th, so it was a long wait, and just on pins and needles. The folks at UC Davis asked if we would wait that long because they really wanted us to do an embryo count. Not only just, okay, they're pregnant, they've got an embryo in there, but they wanted to make sure it was the optimal time for an embryo count to be done if they were pregnant. Because they said with each goat breed, they use a different dose of the ovulating inducing hormone. And because no one's really done this with STIs before, they made their best educated guess on how much of that hormone should be used. If they didn't use enough, the ovulation might not occur in time. If they use too much, you might get too many embryos, and you don't want either one. So they did their best evaluation of what the dose would be, but they really wanted the feedback as to whether we had the optimal dose. And that's something that, as more people just share the actual amounts they used and their protocols with other veterinarians, to hopefully provide the best success going forward with other projects. So go ahead to the next slide. So you can imagine the smiles that we all had when Dr. Michael came back out again, and we had the two does that were pregnant. So Mary Lou and Laurel, who actually pulled her cedar, were both pregnant, and they both had twins. And so with doing all the math on the dates, they are due March 22nd of this year, and very, very excited about that. I have not had Dr. Michael out for that last doe to see if she's pregnant, although she has not come into heat. So we'll just have to see. Next time Dr. Michael's in the area, I'll probably have her out and do an ultrasound. Okay, for next slide. So now we're awaiting the births. Kind of the plans going forward is when, if we have doelings, hopefully we'll have a mix of doelings and bucklings with these babies. When they're grown, any doelings will be inseminated again with Hernando Ponce de Leon semen, so that the next generation of kids will have 75% his genetics. My current feeling, as a personal feeling, is that's about as far as I want to go with breeding to Hernando Ponce de Leon. But if we look at, the genetic diversity, of these kids, and maybe some geneticists, maybe someone like Dr. Spangenberg can help us decide whether it would be kind of safe to go to another level, or we just need to call it good there. But I mean, my feeling is right now I'll just take it to 75%, and then we can start breeding the daughters and sons and stuff kind of to each other to kind of keep that level of genetics up when creating this line. F1 bucklings, or as close to F1 as we can get, will be collected when they're old enough and frozen semen donated back to the frozen herd inventory, and also offered to USDA to help refresh the genetics that they have there. And then I expect that F2 and F3 bucklings should be available within a few years for folks that want to get one on their herd, in their herd, although through the frozen herd inventory, there will be semen available too. So people will have a choice on how they want to bring these genetics into their own herd going forward.
I just want to add that in case anyone's not familiar, F1 means like the first generation, F2 and 3 is like the second and third generation.
Yes, yep. Okay, next slide. So some of the things that I learned through this process, as I'd mentioned before, multiple experts advised me to breed the does during their natural annual breeding season. And this is despite the fact that my does regularly get pregnant out of season. They are just little hussies. But they said, you got to give it the best chance when the heat is strongest, when they'll be most responsive to the hormones that are given to them. So, other people might fall is my herd's time when they are just screaming and just raging hormones. Other people might have a different time of year that's, when their does are in that cycle. But definitely the experts said that's your best shot. The other thing, estrus synchronization is just not foolproof. So the experts told me to have some backup does because you can do everything right and lose a cedar. You can do everything right, not lose a cedar, and it still doesn't synchronize right. So just make sure you have some backups so that when you have your appointment, you're ready to bring animals in there. You got the semen in your tank, or your, veterinarian's tank. You're ready to go with those that are just about to ovulate. And then, as I've mentioned, a couple of my does, I don't know how they did it, but they turned around and pulled out their cedars. And when they do that, it can cause them to ovulate too early in the process. So I've now learned to snip the little tail off the cedar just inside them, so it doesn't extend outside the body, and it's harder for them to go and grab and pull it out. I was a little concerned about how I was going to get, the semen here, and keep it and get it, to the vet at the right time and stuff. And I looked at semen tanks, and they're really expensive. And I thought, you know what? Let me just go on Craigslist and see if anybody has one for sale. And sure enough, someone did. And I talked to some of my friends who have semen tanks, and they said, there's so little to go wrong with them. Unless it has a hole in it, you're probably going to be okay with a used tank. And so, yeah, for, I think, the tank and the gloves and the warming kit and a couple of other supplies, all were like $200 on Craigslist, which compared to a new tank is nothing. And it worked perfectly. So if someone's thinking about doing this, keep an eye on Craigslist, because that's a great place to go get it. As far as ordering from the repository, and in this case, the semen was at RSG, they had some good processes for ordering the semen, but you have to plan really early. And even if you have a scheduled date, what I found out is they just sent it when it was most convenient for them. So thank God I already had the tank and I had the nitrogen in there and I was ready to go because it came about 2 weeks earlier than I had ordered it, and nothing you can do about that. So just be prepared for that. Okay, next slide. So in summary, I took the picture on the left just a couple hours ago. That is Laurel showing a very fashionable baby bump. And if everything's successful, Mary Lou and Laurel will have babies on March 22nd. And we will be sharing cute baby goat pictures and see if we can see any difference in the look or, the influence of Hernando Ponce de Leon. So that's all I had. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, this is super exciting. I don't have any questions. I would, we did artificial insemination for a little while. I mean, we tried it 2 or 3 years. And I won't get into that, but some things about having your own tank that we were told, we've not done it obviously very long, but the people that would come and fill our tank were pretty rural. And so there was a couple that had a route that would come and top off your tank every so often. And they recommended, you know, keeping your tank cold even if you didn't have semen in it, because something about it costs you more and it takes longer when you top it, when you fill it back up again to chill it down and prep for semen coming. And there was some things to be considered there, that if somebody's considering keeping a tank on your property but not keeping it cold all the time, you just kind of have to do a little planning if you don't have an immediate source of nitrogen to fill it. So be aware of that.
That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and I want to say they came once a month. We would have to set our tank out where they could get to it, and they would just come by and top it off and leave us a bill. And I don't even remember what it costs now, but it was way more than we should have been spending, no better than we did with it.
Yeah.
But we kept the tank cold, like I say, for like 3 years, and then finally gave up.
Lisa, are you comfortable sharing like what kind of cost this project is projected to be with, you know, not necessarily just this one, but you know, it's a multi-year project. So, what is the projected cost of doing this type of thing?
That's a good question. I haven't done like the whole projection for like the 3 years, but I can tell you what the individual pieces have cost. To get the semen shipped from RSG, you either need to send a shipping tank to them and have it shipped back, or you rent a tank from them and they'll send their tank out with your stuff, you transfer it to your tank, and then ship theirs back. And to me, it looked like a much less expensive option to actually rent the tank from them versus ship some tank that I tried to buy a used shipping tank, and it was $800 for the shipping tank, right? And I was like, okay, that's weird. Plus, I'm shipping to them and back, or they're shipping their tank and it's to me and back. So the shipping cost is the same. So I said, I rented the tank with the shipping costs and the rental. It was about $320 to get the semen out here. So every time I pull semen from that repository, it's going to be $320. To Christy's point, I still think that will be less expensive than trying to keep my tank full for a year, year and a half, 2 years, bringing all of the, you know, semen out here at once versus keeping it at RSG. Plus, I mean, this is rare stuff. I don't want to mess up and possibly make a mistake or forget to, you know, get liquid nitrogen, and heaven forbid I ruin, you know, some of the straws. I wouldn't want to do that. So I'm just taking the approach of keeping it there and ordering it when I need it for the next step of the project. The procedure at UC Davis was very reasonable in my mind. I think it was $175 per doe. I'll have to check on that, but it was definitely under $200 per doe.
Wow.
Very reasonable. And the hormones and the cedars and that kind of stuff for the 6 does, it was less than $100 for the hormones that I got from UC Davis. The cedar, my vet was coming out anyway, so I got the cedars from her. I think it was $30 for the 6 cedars. So that came in a lot less than I was expecting as far as that goes. the pre-breeding exam, basically whatever your vet charges. My farm calls are a little expensive with my vet, but I think she only charged me $50 per doe to do the ultrasound and the pre-breeding exam and stuff. And then same kind of thing with the ultrasound pregnancy check. You could probably get it done for a little less or just go with a blood test for the pregnancy check. But UC Davis was so helpful through this whole process that I really wanted to help them. If they wanted to learn how to do this with SCIs as far as the dosage, I wanted to be there to support them because they were very helpful. I told them what the project was. I told them about how rare the semen was, and they put their best folks on it. The photographs of the procedure, they actually sent a photographer there from UC Davis so that they could take professional photographs and make sure. They usually don't allow someone like me to take photos of the procedure or the operating room or anything. So they volunteered to do it, and they provided those photos and allowed us to use them. Cool. So they've just been really great as far as that goes. So that's kind of the expense as I go through this with the next generation. I expect those costs to be about the same.
Thank you for the breakdown.
Plus the testing.
Yeah, now that's a good point because I do the testing anyways, but if somebody doesn't normally do the disease testing, it is for me about $6 each for the blood test for CA, CAE, and Q fever, somewhere between $6 and $8 each test. Then the PCR test, you can do a group PCR test with 5 animals, and it's $50 for that group test. And, hopefully you don't have a positive, but if a positive happens, then they automatically will do an individual test on each of the animals, and that's $50 each. But if you've got, a clean herd and there's no need for that individual test, it's like $50 for the group PCR for 5.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you so much for the breakdown on that. It's exciting to see this come together, and it's kind of ever moving. So really look forward to March and April.
Me too.
The burning question is, though, how are we going to name these babies? I mean, this is critical.
Oh, yeah. Definitely we should have some help naming because I'm just about out of names. Yeah. And Laurel, one of the responses that you got back from the USDA was they want pictures of the babies, right?
Yeah.
We're going to bore everybody with tons of pictures of these babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hopefully will be fun. Hopefully March will be warm enough to where I don't have to worry about, freezing nights or anything. I am putting up cameras so that I can keep an eye on them. And then when they're due, I'm probably just going to sleep out there in the barn. Because it'll be like, I can't let anything go wrong.
Yeah, I've never done that, but this would be one of those times that it would be worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, I think that's it then, Erin.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Lisa. This is great. Yeah. Great to see it all set up, and I think everybody's excited. And anyone who's has questions, can they email you? Do you want
sure.
Sent to your board member email or to your Windancer?
Either way, they can contact me if I can help in any way. I will. I'm hoping that we find someone to take on the Hernando de Soto line. John is taking on the Abuelo line, John from Willow Valley Farm. And it would be nice to get all three of them, out in our modern herd.
Yeah, finding the right herd for that is going to be important.
Yeah.
So, and Lisa McCune said somebody by Ponce de Leon should definitely be named Fontana.
Is that
connection?
Is that one of the places he visited or founded, or?
I don't know. Maybe Lisa wants to pop on and explain.
Ponce de Leon Fontana likely refers to the legendary fountain of youth the Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon searched for in Florida.
Nice.
That's actually really good. I like that.
Well,
yeah.
Fontana. I'll write that down.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. If the last doe, who I haven't pregnancy checked yet, her name is Fortuna.
Oh, cool.
So if she had
that would be perfect.
It'd be Fontana. But either way, that sounds like a name I need to use.
Yeah, that is cool. And the whole Fountain of Youth thing with us bringing this semen back, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good tie-in.
Might be a good boy name then, being a Fountain of Youth.
It's from the men who always die earlier than women. Have you not read the statistics?
So,
if anyone has questions about our gene bank or anything else, you can send it to the genetics committee at genetics@scigba.org.
Sounds good. I'll add that in the description too for the YouTube video.
Yeah, that'll be good.
So, yeah, great job. Our genetics committee, headed by Laurel, has just done so much in the last year and a half or so. It's been really awesome to see it come to life. Literally now.
Yeah.
Yeah.